Really delighted to have Alex Krainer with us. I've been watching his stuff for ages on all these channels who are exposing Zelensky, with Scott Ritter, Colonel McGregor, all these guys. Really just take no notice of the mainstream media, folks. These guys are hitting it on the nail. And I've been dying to speak to Alex for a while. He's also got a trading background, and he has his own website, Naked Hedgy. He is on X. The link is down there. He's got the iSystem website. He's got his Substack and several books on Amazon as well. So all the links.
No, none of the books are on Amazon anymore.
Oh, they're not? Sorry.
No, I got fully canceled by Amazon.
Really? On what grounds?
The first book that was banned was my geopolitical treatise called Grand Deception, and that was banned. Amazon got a letter from a man named Jonathan Weiner, and Jonathan Weiner used to be an advisor to John Kerry when he was the state secretary. A proper creature of the swamp, and Amazon banned the book, no questions asked, delisted it, deleted all the reviews, which were virtually all of them 5 stars. And then my other 2 books are all on, about my day job, which is trading commodities. And that was fine until in 2021, one of them got an award. And then the book started selling, and then I started noticing that I'm not getting any royalties paid out. And then there was several months of email exchanges, like, why am I not getting paid out? But the Amazon system showed like they were paying them out, like royalties added up, and then boom, they disappear, and then add up, and then they disappear. And I said, where's the money going? Because it's not coming to me. And then ultimately, after about 3 months, they were like, oh, yeah, right. Our bad. We owe you some money. We'll be paying you out. And then a few hours later comes an email and saying, never mind. We're not going to pay you out anything, and we're canceling your account, and everything gone. Again, my whole account, both remaining books, all of the reviews, all of the records of my royalties, they just flushed everything down the memory hole. And that was that. So nothing is available on Amazon anymore. My 2 trading books are available on my website under the About tab, iSystem Trend Compass, iSystem Trend Following. And they're both free downloads by PDF. And they're not free because they're crap. They're free because Amazon continued to sell the book that got an award. It got an award for a best commodities trading book for traders and investors in 2021 and 22. They continued selling it for something like $900 a copy. But, for themselves, I was not receiving any royalties. And so I thought, okay, fine, I'll just put it on my website free of charge so that people don't end up giving stupid amounts of money to Amazon for no good reason.
Wow. So much freedom of speech. Hopefully now Trump's in, we'll start to see some of this become reversible. So we've got the question title on this podcast is, did Zelensky sell Ukraine's minerals to Starmer? And I've watched you on some other channels talking about this. So what is your opinion of this? How would you answer this question?
I looked into it, and what seems to me to be the case, and this is dot connecting. I have no evidence to prove this conclusively, but it seems to me that on the 16th of January, when Keir Starmer went to Kiev to sign the 100-year partnership between the United Kingdom and Ukraine, part of that agreement, which is contained in a secret appendix, says that upon cessation of hostility, all of Ukraine's ports power stations, natural gas deposits, pipelines, storage facilities, titanium deposits, the list goes on, are going to be handed over to British interests. Now, this is based on an intelligence leak from Ukrainian intelligence, which means that it may or may not be true. However, the actual agreement itself, which is available online under gov.uk, it says that the agreement entails other addendums, appendices, whatever. There's it's spelled out in the agreement in black and white, but it doesn't list the documents. So it is referring to certain additions which are not named or specified. So it's referring to something that we don't know what it is necessarily. Then in the press release, which was published on UK government website the same day, 16th January, it says that this agreement places Great Britain as the most favored partner of Ukraine in terms of economic development. And then apparently there's also a video message on Telegram by Volodymyr Zelensky on the 17th of January, in which he says that there's a secret appendix, there's a secret part of this 100-year partnership agreement. Okay, so that's a few data points that tend to support this idea that there's a secret appendix and that it hands over the lion's share of Ukraine's wealth to British interests. And then there's also, the observed pattern of behavior, the conduct of the British government and of Zelensky, and the way they're dealing with the United States. And they're not dealing with the cards on the table. They're clearly concealing something. They're clearly doing like some kind of a 3-card Monty. And but first, the agreement has a history. The deal that Zelensky offered to Trump, it dates back to September of last year, 24. So Zelensky went to New York to see Donald Trump. And on that occasion, he offered him the $500 billion rare earth minerals deal. And that's strange because at that time, Trump was not even elected yet, let alone president. So it seems to me that it was just an insurance policy to make sure that if Trump happens to be elected and becomes president, that they kind of bait him into continuing to support Zelensky government and to continue to support Ukraine financially and militarily. So the deal originates with Zelensky. It wasn't Trump who went to Zelensky to say, hey, I want this deal. It was Zelensky who went to Trump. And also the $500 billion sum originates with Zelensky. To me, that's very strange. I very much doubt that Zelensky kind of put on his strategic thinker hat on and decided, let's just be sure that if the wrong person gets elected in the United States, that I have an insurance policy. He was probably encouraged to do this or instructed to do this by somebody, and we can guess. And then when Trump sent his Treasury Secretary to Kiev with the draft proposal, Zelensky rejected it. And then he had a meeting with the Secretary of State, and he said, "Yeah, okay, I'll sign the agreement. We're gonna do the agreement, but I have to run it through my legislative process." And so Marco Rubio says, "Okay, fine." And then 2 days later, Zelensky reneges. He says, I rejected the American proposal, but he says that in the media. He doesn't call up Marco Rubio to discuss it or to say, sorry, I cannot accept it as is. We need to change something about this. So very, very bizarre behavior about it from somebody who is absolutely desperate for continued American financial and military support. He's being very brazen with exactly the only party in the world that can save his skin. So that needs to be explained, and it doesn't explain itself easily. And then another thing happens on 24th January. Boris Johnson, again, descends on Kiev, and two things happen almost immediately. First, Zelensky reverses his rejection of the American proposal. So he says like, okay, we're going to do the deal anyway. And second thing that happens is that Ukraine's parliament votes the resolution to extend Zelensky's presidential mandate. And that wasn't the first time they voted on this. Only the first time when they did, they voted wrong. They declined to extend his presidency. And then the second time they voted yes. So they did kind of grant him parliamentary legitimacy, even though this is still unconstitutional, because Ukraine's constitution is very clear that under no circumstances can president's mandate be extended one day longer than 5 years. And under no circumstances can presidential elections be delayed. War, no war, whatever. It's 5 years and that's that. So his rule now is unconstitutional and therefore illegal, which implies that Keir Starmer signed that 100-year partnership agreement with a private person. That is, if a new government comes to Kiev and that new government aligns with Moscow, they're going to take that agreement and they're going to tear it up. They're going to say this is worthless and we're not obliged by this at all because Zelensky was not our legitimate president. Okay, so what happens then is that I think on the 17th February, Donald Trump says, or on the 15th, I forget, Donald Trump says Zelensky is a dictator with 4% approval rating in Ukraine. And the British go insane. You know, the whole British media collectively jump to Zelensky's defense, and Keir Starmer says he's not a dictator and it's perfectly reasonable to delay elections in wartime conditions. And even Nigel Farage jumps to his, like everybody goes berserk. So obviously they have an issue with Zelensky's legitimacy. And then after Boris Johnson's visit in Kiev, Zelensky goes to the United States with some kind of an agreement, which is less than dog shit. It's just completely nothing, not even something that you can discuss on the basis of. And then they have that incident where he's sent packing without any kind of anything signed. And I think it was understood that this was going to happen by Zelensky and whoever are his handlers. I think that the idea is just simply to string the United States along into thinking that they're going to get some massive $500 billion deal in order to lure them into continuing their financial and military support of Ukraine. And then they're going to get the future proceeds of these rare earth deposits in Ukraine, which most probably don't exist to begin with. And it's all going to go through some fund that's going to be set up in the future that the Americans are going to have to provide seed capital for. And, you know, it really looks like a hustle. And I found it interesting then in an interview that Marco Rubio gave after his meeting with Zelensky, that he actually used that word hustle. He said, I hope they're not trying to hustle us. This is not going to fly with Donald Trump. So I think that this suggests that Trump is perfectly aware of what's going on. He understands that they're being strung along, that they're being offered an invisible carrot to continue doing all the heavy lifting and all the dirty work in Ukraine, and that the lion's share of the country's wealth has already been signed over to British interests. And so that's how I see it. I think I'm probably not far off from the truth, at least the dots that I see that connect very elegantly and that are consistent with, you know, historical patterns of events, with this kind of thuggish behavior, you know, and you know, let's also keep in mind that Britain is in a catastrophic financial condition. They're absolutely desperate for new, fresh collateral, and that Ukraine's estimated, whatever it is, 10, 12 trillion dollars of natural resource wealth could be that collateral that would then be able to fuel a new credit expansion cycle and refloat the British economy in some way. And so now I think this is their struggle. And then, you know, but in order for it to work, and this is also something that Boris Johnson said in one of his interviews, it's essential that the United States provide a security guarantee, because without it, not a penny of Ukraine's wealth can flow westward. So that's where we are. We'll see how it ends, but it seems to me that the British government has kind of dug itself into a hole, and the only side that can get them out of that hole is the United States, which is, you know, Donald Trump administration. And it doesn't seem to me that they're keen on doing that at all.
Yeah, it reminds me of the con man who tried to sell and successfully sold the Eiffel Tower multiple times to people. And we've got a question here from Lisa. Is it true that Zelensky has been selling minerals to multiple countries? Expanding on that, Alex, could you explain how Ukraine gets carved up, and the interests like BlackRock, they're already in these globalists and the banks? If you could just go over some of the basics for us, please.
Well, I think this is the case, and I think that those countries are almost certainly Great Britain and the United States. That is, British and American interests. And then probably there's a lot of German companies that are there with heavy investments that have taken control of certain assets of. I mean, that's not that I know that because I was told by somebody in Ukraine that practically all of the big German corporations are there, and they're like in this feeding frenzy for Ukraine's assets. French companies as well, French interests are there. And then, well, let's say it's very likely that the Poles are in there, the Turks are in there, probably Israelis, and so forth. So it's almost certainly almost certainly true that, and this is all going through Zelensky. You know, he's the big guy, Mr. 10% man, or however much. And I think it's all a very nice party that is going to work until it doesn't. And I think that this is why everybody is in such a tizzy about Donald Trump taking over, because none of these arrangements are going to stand if Donald Trump yanks the support for Ukraine.
So here in the UK, like you said, you know, the news was all over hero worshipping Zelensky. And we've got Piers Morgan as well. When anyone challenges him, he says Putin, he's like Hitler. He's going to take Ukraine, a sovereign country, and he's going to take Poland, and he's going to stomp all over Europe. What do you say to that?
Well, it's fear mongering. You know, they are, they're desperate to continue waging war against Russia, and they're not scared. Nobody's really scared that Russia is going to come and conquer Europe, that they're going to bust the border of Poland and Baltic states, and who knows, Hungary, Germany, go to Paris and then cross the channel. And the Russians are not interested in that. They already have the biggest country in the world, spanning 11 time zones. Why would they need to conquer and then police 450 million of hostile Europeans that don't want them there? That would be really, really stupid. And you could say a lot of things about Vladimir Putin, but you could not say that he's stupid. And so I don't think Vladimir Putin is Hitler, and anybody who says that doesn't understand what Hitler was or who he was and how the whole thing in the 1930s and 1940s happened. This is not it. I think that part of the reason why they are keeping this fear mongering going is because they want the war to continue. And as they're running out of the last Ukrainian, they're going to have to use the rest of European populations. And you see them, they're talking about war, they're talking about conscriptions, they're talking about rearming Europe, about increasing military spending, even though they don't have the money. And why is that? That is because Russia is the world's wealthiest country in terms of natural resources, which are estimated to be anywhere between 75 and 90 trillion dollars. And so that's a lot of money, good collateral that the Western financial institutions could use, because it would allow them to issue massive loans to their clients, corporations that could go in there and develop this and that, whatever it be, oil, gas, timber, retail selling, fast food, you name it, And then all of these loans would be getting repaid with interest to Western banks. And so that's a very elegant way of making sure that Russian wealth, Russian natural resources are converted into financial wealth that flows to Western banks. And in doing this, Western banks don't have to wage war. They don't have to drill anything, build anything, dig anything, refine, distribute, market. They don't have to do anything. They just have to conjure these loans into electronic ledgers, key them in, and then the taxpayer pays for the military. The military does the dirty work. The corporations do the business of extracting that wealth, and the bankers just sit back and watch rivers of money flow their way. So that's the only one tiny sliver of our economic structures that has a very, very strong incentive to wage war in order to, they don't have to defeat Russia militarily. They just have to destabilize Russia enough to engineer some kind of a regime change, get some Juan Guaido there into the Kremlin, or Boris Yeltsin type person who's going to let them do whatever they want, and then they go on their merry way, and then they make sure that in the process they balkanize Russia into 5 or 20 separate republics, that they're going to pit one against the other, so that they're always at war against one another, and that they always depend on Western financial institutions for loans, and that they depend on Western military industrial complex for ammunitions and weapons, so they can keep at war with one another. And they always have to make concessions, because they will never be able to afford this, to Western bankers to say, okay, give us this money, loan us this money, and we'll let you have our natural gas, our oil reserves, whatever you like. This is exactly what's going on in Ukraine, except Ukraine is 10 to 12 trillion dollars. Russia is 75 to 90 trillion dollars. So that's the reason. That's the whole how do you call it, justification for it. And then I also wanted to dispel a myth which keeps persisting in the Western information universe, is that we have to be here or there because we need to control those resources. No, you don't. You can have those resources through trade. I grew up in Croatia, and we've always had bananas in our supermarkets, and coffee and cocoa and diesel and petrol in our gas stations, and we never had any military bases anywhere else. We exported what we had, and we imported what we needed. So that's how anybody, anywhere, Switzerland, Sweden, any country can do this. So the idea that the United States has to dominate the Middle East in order to secure the oil is a myth. That's not true. You can simply buy it. And as far as the ordinary person in the street is concerned, you have to buy it anyway. It's not like because Americans have military bases and have hegemony over the Middle East that the oil is free to you. It's not. You still have to pay it. It's just that if you dominate the region, then you decide who's going to get the contracts to develop these resources, and you're going to make sure that those are the clients of JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and RBS and these kinds of HSBC and these kinds of institutions.
Let me just try and summarize that then before we go to the next question. So I think what Alex is saying is these countries are destabilized, puppet governments are put in, and the resources are divided up amongst the Western corporations. So Ukraine is X trillion, but Russia, this massive country, has got 75 to 100 trillion worth of natural resources. And if they destabilize Russia through the Ukraine war, that's a stepping stone to seize all of the Russian assets. That was the play, but it's backfired on them. And another thing that people are putting out is that anyone who is against the war continuing is a Putin repeater. But that's just an ad hominem attack. These people are not giving responses steeped in geopolitical research like Alex is. We had Matthew Ho on, Colonel McGregor. These guys have lived this their entire lives, and they're giving the backstory. The news just tells you pretext. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. The public buy that, and then they go in and they just make absolute fortunes while blood sacrificing millions of people. Over 5 million dead, war on terror. Over 1 million dead in Ukraine. It is obscene, and that blood is on the hands of Keir Starmer now, trying to perpetuate this, and Boris Johnson for scuppering the peace deal. Anyway, you got a question coming in about the profiteering side of it, relating to the Biden crime family. So Amber's wondering about, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Burisma. What was the play they were making on Ukraine's resources?
Well, Hunter Biden was part of this whole corruption network. And I think that, many things. It's, what do you do when you go on the board of directors of Burisma and you don't even speak Russian or Ukrainian? You have no idea about the industry. You have no idea about the country. Obviously, it's a payoff. So, Joe Biden, who has been in charge of Project Ukraine on behalf of the Western Empire, received a payoff, and the payoff was, here, we'll put your son on the board of directors and we're going to pay him director's fees, and it's going to be some exorbitant amount. I think we were told that it was $50,000 a month or $80,000 a month, but I think it was much, much more than that. And then while he's at that, he's in a position to wheel and deal, make contracts mediate between Ukrainian and American companies. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but he was doing a little bit of all of that. And so that was his role, but I think that his role was relatively minor. I think that this was merely a payoff for Joe Biden for his role in managing Ukraine and making sure that it was brought into the Western orbit.
Okay, Hugh, you've got an interesting comment here. And indeed, every way the war turns, they make money off it. They made trillions bombing the poorest countries in the world, Iraq, Afghanistan included. If a soldier picked up a banana in the chow hall, Dick Cheney made $50 for that. And the rebuilding contracts and the profits from selling the weapons, it's all a big scheme to enrich the bankers. So what is the rebuilding side of it, Alex?
Well, rebuilding is also part of it, because that's also where you get massive contracts for this and that. You get to create credit for it. I think that the Europeans, this was Macron's project, which obviously is the brainchild of the banking banking establishment in France. They were going to use well, they still want to do this. They want to use Russian frozen resources, frozen assets in European banks, which amount to about 250 billion euros. And they want to use that as collateral to issue credit for rebuilding of Ukraine after the cessation of hostilities. And the contracts would be awarded to French corporations. So, you know, they would be rebuilding this and that, the factories, bridges, roads, whatever they are planning to do there. And I'm sure that the plans would be very, very extensive, because if you're going to leave the local population saddled with the debts, then you don't care what the ultimate amount of debts are. In fact, you prefer that the amount of debts is unpayable, because then you always hold them in dependency. You always hold them as you know, as the economic hitman book explains. They can't pay you back, and then you say, like, well, you know, you're going to